The hospital room hummed with the quiet, unsettling rhythm of life support machines. Outside, the late afternoon sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and soft purple. Inside, the light was artificial, clinical. Arthur Hayes lay in the bed, thin and pale, the blankets barely disguising the frailness of his bone. He was in his mid-70s, but the illness had aged him beyond his years, stripping away his vibrant spirit, leaving only a flicker. Nurse Sarah adjusted the IV drip, her movements gentle, practiced. She had been with Arthur for weeks, now watched him fade day by day. He was a quiet man, polite even in his pain, and he had a peculiar fondness for old rock and roll. His small radio, usually tuned to a classic hit station, played a low instrumental version of Can't Help Falling in Love. "How are we feeling today, Mr. Hayes?" Sarah asked, her voice soft, not wanting to startle him. He opened his eyes slowly, the blue faded, but still sharp with a lingering intelligence. "Like a worn-out record, Sarah," he rasped, a weak smile touching his lips, spinning its last few rotations. Sarah's heart ached. She'd heard that phrase before, and it always meant the same thing. The doctors had given him a few more days, maybe a week at best. His family had visited earlier, their faces streaked with tears and a quiet grief. They loved him deeply, but there was a helplessness in their eyes, a silent surrender to the inevitable. "You're tougher than you think, Arthur," she said, pulling up a chair beside his bed. She always took a moment to just sit with him, to offer a presence beyond the sterile medical routines. He seemed to appreciate it. "Not tough enough for this one," he sighed, his gaze drifting to the window, though he couldn't really see anything but the wall of the building opposite. Life's got a way of Kate them, comfortable in its sadness. Sarah watched him, wondering what thoughts filled his mind in these final hours. Regrets, memories, dreams unfulfilled. "There was one thing," Arthur began, his voice barely a whisper, forcing Sarah to lean closer. "Always wanted to see it. Never got around to it." Sarah waited, holding her breath. His eyes fluttered, closed for a moment, and a faint smile, almost ethereal, touched his lips. "Graceland," he breathed out the word. "Barely obother. Elvis Haustos. Always wanted to go all through Gopher." "Corey?" Sarah straightened. Arthur's love for Elvis was legendary on the ward. He had worn a faded Elvis t-shirt under his hospital gown almost every day, until it got too uncomfortable. He often hummed Heartbreak Hotel or Love Me Tender when he was feeling a bit better. "Graceland?" She repeated the word, sounding vast and impossible in the small hospital room. "You're a true fan, aren't you?" He nodded, a single tear escaping the corner of his eye and tracing a path down his temple. "Since I was a boy, had all his records, saw him in concert once back in '72. Just pure magic." He coughed, a dry, rattling sound. Sarah gently helped him sip some water. "It was always my dream," he continued, his voice weaker now, "to walk through those rooms, to see where he lived, where he made music, where he was just a man, not the king, just Elvis." He paused, his breathing shallow. "But life, you know, responsibilities, work, then the kids. Never had the time, never had the money, always next year, next year." His gaze found hers, and there was a profound sadness in them. "Now there is no next year." Sarah's throat tightened. The raw, simple truth of his words hit her hard, a lifetime dream unfulfilled. For a moment, she was overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of it. Graceland was in Memphis, hundreds of miles away. Arthur was too weak to even sit up unassisted, let alone travel. It was a dying man's wish, a beautiful, heartbreaking fantasy. But then, something shifted inside her. She looked at Arthur's face. The lines of weariness, the deep, abiding love for an idol that had spanned his entire life. This wasn't just a casual wish. It was a deep-seated longing, a final yearning for a connection that had always eluded him. He deserved this. He deserved more than the sterile walls and the beeping machines. "Arthur," she said, her voice firm, surprising even herself, "don't you worry about next year. We're going to think about today." He gave her a weak, almost imperceptible smile. "Bless your heart, Sarah, but some dreams." He closed his eyes again, drifting. Sarah stayed there, watching him, her mind racing. Graceland. How could it even be possible? She had no nurse. But the image of Arthur's face, the quiet despair in his eyes as he spoke of no next year, burned into her mind. It was impossible, but was it truly? The radio softly played another Elvis tune, a hopeful melody. Sarah stood up, a new resolve hardening her expression. She didn't know how, but she had to try. For Arthur, for the simple, profound wish of a dying man who just wanted to walk in the footsteps of his king one last time. It was a long shot, a crazy idea, but sometimes the craziest ideas were the ones that needed to be tried. She would make some calls, she would send some emails, she would do whatever she could. She owed him a chance. Sarah left Arthur's room that evening, feeling a strange mix of despair and fierce determination. She spent her break in the hospital's small, quiet lounge, phone in hand. Where did one even begin with a wish like this? She started with the obvious, a quick online search for Make-A-Wish foundations for adults. She found several of their websites filled with heartwarming stories of fulfilled dreams. She filled out an inquiry form for 3 different organizations, typing quickly, trying to convey the urgency and the deep emotional significance of Arthur's request without sounding overly dramatic. The first few responses were disheartening. Another had a long waiting list and strict criteria. Perodontizing terminal illnesses with a longer prognosis, or those that could be fulfilled locally. A third charity, after reviewing Arthur's medical reports, which she had to get permission from his family to share, regretfully informed her that his condition was too critical for the extensive travel and logistical challenges involved. "We simply don't have the resources for that level of medical support," the kind voice on the phone explained, her voice tinged with regret. Sarah slumped in her chair, the weight of the task pressing down on her. It was exactly as she had feared. Graceland wasn't just across town. It was a major undertaking, a cross-state journey that required specialized medical transport, round-the-clock nursing care, and private access to a tourist attraction. It felt insurmountable. But then she remembered Arthur's faded smile, his whispered, "No, next year." She couldn't give up, not yet. Her next thought was bolder, perhaps foolish. Why not go directly to Graceland? She found their official website. There was a section for fan inquiries, general information, and group bookings. Nothing about fulfilling a dying man's last wish. Still, she found a general contact email address and began to type. She wrote about Arthur, his lifelong devotion to Elvis, the single concert he'd attended, the records, the t-shirts. She described his frail condition, the doctor's prognosis. She painted a picture of a man whose only remaining desire was to step onto the hallowed ground of his hero. She kept it concise, respectful, and deeply heartfelt. She attached a brief note from Arthur's doctor, verifying his condition, and a short message from his family, expressing their support for Sarah's efforts. She pressed send, feeling a mix of hope and absurdity. What were the chances a major tourist attraction would even read an email like that, let alone respond? Arthur continued to fade, though he still had moments of clarity, often asking Sarah about her day, or sharing a quiet memory of Elvis. Sarah, meanwhile, felt a growing sense of urgency. Each day that passed was a day lost. She checked her email religiously, but there was nothing from Graceland. The silence was deafening. Just as she was starting to lose hope, considering reaching out to local news outlets, or starting a fornicating campaign, an email notification, guest services, her heart leaped. She clicked it open, her fingers trembling slightly out. It explained that Graceland was a busy historical site and museum, and accommodating a private medically complex visit was exceptionally challenging. Sarah's shoulders sagged. She knew it. She had been foolish to hope. "Could you please provide us with more detailed medical information and perhaps a general outline of Mr. Hayes's mobility needs and preferred timing within the next 48? Ed." She immediately forwarded the email to Arthur's family and his primary physician, Dr. Miller, who had been sympathetic to her efforts. Dr. Miller was a pragmatic man, but even he had been moved by Arthur's quiet dignity. Quickly provided the necessary medical reports, emphasizing the critical nature of Arthur's condition, but also highlighting that he was stable enough for careful, supervised transport. If all conditions were met, the family, overjoyed, added their heartfelt support, offering any help they could. Sarah worked tirelessly, coordinating with the hospital's social worker and the doctor to compile a comprehensive document outlining Arthur's exact medical requirements: a portable oxygen concentrator, a specialized stretcher for transport, medications, a nurse to accompany him at all times, and a need for a quiet, low-stimulus environment. She even researched potential medical transport companies that specialized in long-distance patient transfers. She sent the detailed package back to Graceland, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Now the ball was in their court. She knew it was still a monumental request. But for the first time, she felt a glimmer of possibility. Arthur's wish, whispered so faintly, might just have been heard after all. The next few days were a whirlwind of anticipation for Sarah. She checked her inbox constantly, every notification sending a jolt through her. She tried to keep her hopes in check, reminding herself that exploring the possibility was a long way from a definite yes. Arthur, meanwhile, seemed to rally slightly. Whether it was the quiet conversations with Sarah about her efforts, or simply a momentary reprieve from his illness, he seemed more lucid, more present. He didn't press her for details, just offered a weak smile when she told him they were still working on it. Then a new email arrived. This one wasn't from guest services. The sender was Priscilla B. Riley, Director of Special Projects, Elvis Presley Enterprises. Sarah's breath hitched. This was serious. The email was direct and empathetic. "Dear M.S. Jenkins," it began, "your story about Mr. Hayes has deeply moved everyone here at Graceland. From the leadership team to the staff who manage our tours, Elvis Presley always had an extraordinary connection with his fans, and his fazly overrated spofferade." Sarah's eyes scanned the next lines, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the words on the screen. They said, yes, Graceland, the actual Graceland, was going to make it happen. "We will open the mansion privately for him for a limited time, ensuring a quiet, peaceful experience. Free from crowds, a small dedicated team will be on hand to assist and guide him through the grounds and the mansion itself." It was more than Sarah could have ever dreamed. A private visit. Full medical transport. It was extraordinary. "We believe this is the least we can do for a fan as devoted as Mr. Hayes," the email concluded. "Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss the finer details and set a provisional date. We aim to make this happen within the next week." Given the urgency, Sarah didn't hesitate. She called the number immediately, her voice trembling slightly as she introduced herself to Priscilla Riley. Priscilla's voice was warm, professional, and genuinely caring. She explained that the decision had been made after the story of Arthur had circulated among the staff. "Elvis loved his fans more than anything," Priscilla explained. "He would often give away gifts, cars, jewelry, just because he felt a connection. This is in that same spirit. It's about honoring a lifetime of devotion." Priscilla outlined the logistics, going over the specialized ambulance, the route, the nursing staff. She explained that they had a small medical team on standby at Graceland for such rare special circumstances. "We've done similar things before for very ill children, but an adult fan in this specific context, it's unique but deeply meaningful to us," she said. Sarah provided all the necessary medical contacts, confirmed Arthur's readiness for travel, as long as all precautions were met, and discussed the best possible dates. It was decided that the visit would happen in 4 days, allowing just enough time for final preparations and the coordination of the medical transport after the call. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. She practically ran back to Arthur's room, her heart bursting with the news. She found him awake, looking a little more tired than usual. "Arthur," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I have something to tell you." He looked at her, his eyes questioning. "Graceland," she said, a wide smile spreading across her face. "They said yes, they're going to make it happen. They're sending a special ambulance, and they're going to open the mansion just for you. You're going to Graceland, Arthur." Arthur's eyes, previously dull, widened. A flicker of disbelief, then something akin to pure wonder bloomed in them. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Tear, this time not of sadness, but of profound joy, traced a path down his cheek. He reached out a trembling hand, grasping Sarah's. His grip was weak, but the emotion behind it was powerful. "No, you're kidding me." "I'm not," Sarah insisted, her own tears blurring her vision. "It's real, Arthur. In 4 days, you're going to Graceland." He lay back, his eyes closed, a beatific smile spreading across his face. He didn't say anything more, but the room was suddenly filled with a quiet, vibrant energy. The hum of the machine seemed to fade into the background. For the first time, in a very long time, Arthur Hayes looked utterly, completely at peace. To dream once a whispered, impossible yearning was now tangible within reach. And it was all thanks to the kindness of strangers and the spirit of a king, who still touched hearts decades after his passing. The next 4 days were a whirlwind of activity, transforming Arthur's quiet hospital room into a hub of planning and anticipation. The news of Graceland's decision spread through the hospital like wildfire. Doctors, nurses, and even administrative staff would stop by Arthur's door, offering quiet words of encouragement and expressions of awe. It was a rare ray of sunshine in an otherwise often somber environment. Priscilla Riley, from Elvis Presley Enterprises, was true to her word. She was incredibly organized and empathetic. She coordinated directly with Dr. Miller and the hospital's social worker, ensuring every medical detail was covered. The specialized medical transport company, Angel Wings Medical Transport, was top tier, known for handling critically ill patients with the utmost care. They provided a detailed itinerary, a state-of-the-art ambulance, equipped like a mobile ICU, a team of 2 paramedics and an OMUC nurse, all experienced in long-haul patient transfers. They would leave early in the morning and drive straight through with planned stops for patient care and crew breaks. Sarah was chosen to be Arthur's accompanying nurse, a role she accepted with immense pride and responsibility. She spent hours revealing Arthur's medical history, his current medication, regimen, and emergency protocols. She packed a small bag for herself and for Arthur, his favorite Elvis T-shirt, a worn photo of him younger, vibrated at that '72 concert, and a small, soft blanket that smelled faintly of home. The thought of Graceland had ignited a spark in him that Sarah hadn't seen in weeks. He asked questions about the journey, about what he might see. "Do you think I'll see the peacock stained glass?" he'd ask, his voice raspy but full of wonder. "And the jungle room?" "I always heard about the jungle room." Sarah, armed with online photos and virtual tours she'd quickly browsed, described everything she could. "Yes, Arthur, I'm sure you will," she'd reassure him, her heart swelling with emotion at his childlike excitement. His family, once quietly resigned, were now buzzing with nervous energy. His daughter Maria came every day, bringing small comforts, adjusting his pillows, smoothing his hair. She held his hand for long stretches, tears in her eyes, but these were tears of gratitude and awe, not just sorrow. This is amazing, Dad," she'd whisper. You deserve this so much." The hospital administration, initially hesitant about the potential liabilities of such a complex transfer, became fully supportive once they saw the dedication from Graceland. They assigned extra staff to cover Sarah's shifts and ensured all necessary medical equipment for the journey was meticulously checked and ready. On the third day, the day before the trip, Arthur was moved to a special larger room on the ground floor, chosen for its easy access for the medical transport. The room was prepared with his comfort in mind, softer lighting, quiet, with a large window looking out onto a small patch of green. Priscilla Riley called again to confirm the final details. "We've arranged for a doctor to be on standby at Graceland as well, just in case," she informed Sarah. "And a small private resting area will be prepared for Mr. Hayes if he needs to rest during the visit. We want him to be as comfortable as possible." Sarah was deeply touched by the level of care and detail. This wasn't just a publicity stunt. It was a genuine act of compassion. That evening, Arthur was quiet, a thoughtful expression on his face. Sarah sat beside him, checking his vitals, but mostly just being present. "It's real." "It's real, Arthur," Sarah confirmed, her voice gentle. "You're going to be there tomorrow." "You've been an angel, Sarah," he said, turning his head slightly to look at her. "A real angel, thank you." His words brought a lump to her throat. "It's my honor, Arthur," she managed, blinking back tears. "A true honor." As the night deepened, a sense of quiet reverence settled over the hospital room. Arthur drifted in and out of sleep, his breathing soft and even. Sarah watched him, thinking about the incredible journey they were about to embark on. It was more than just a trip. It was a pilgrimage, a last precious dream come true. The logistics were immense. The medical challenges real, but the human spirit, the power of a wish, and the generosity of those who heard it were proving to be even more powerful. Tomorrow, Arthur Hayes, the lifelong Elvis fan, would begin his journey to Graceland. The king was waiting. The hospital parking lot was still shrouded in pre-dawn darkness when the Angel Wings medical transport ambulance arrived. It wasn't like a regular ambulance. It was larger, more like a specialized mobile home, gleaming white under the faint glow of the streetlights. Its side door was a wide ramp designed for easy stretcher access. Inside the Angel Wings team, 2 seasoned paramedics, Mike and Lisa, and a kind-faced transport nurse named David, were already setting up. They worked with quiet efficiency, checking equipment, ensuring everything was sterile and ready for Arthur. Sarah had spent the night by Arthur's side, giving him his last medications, and ensuring he was as comfortable as possible. He was surprisingly lucid this morning, a faint excitement visible in his pale face. "Ready for your big adventure, Arthur?" Sarah whispered, smoothing his hair. He managed a weak nod. Transfer from his hospital bed to the specialized transport stretcher was done with meticulous care. Every movement was slow, gentle, and coordinated. Arthur was a feather-light burden, but the team handled him as if he were made of fragile glass. Once he was securely on the stretcher, wrapped in a warm, soft blanket, he was wheeled smoothly down the hallway, past the quiet nurse's station, and out into the crisp morning air. The ramp lowered and Arthur was gently guided into the ambulance. The interior was surprisingly spacious, clean and well lit. There was an array of medical equipment, but it was organized and discreet, not overwhelming. Sarah settled into a comfortable seat beside his stretcher, her own small bag stowed away. "All set, Mr. Hayes?" Mike, one of the paramedics, asked, his voice calm and reassuring. Arthur gave a small thumbs up. With a final check, the ramp retracted, the door hissed shut, and the ambulance began to move, slowly at first, then picking up speed as it navigated out of the hospital parking lot. The red and blue lights were not flashing, and the siren was silent, respecting the quiet of the morning. The journey was long, stretching across several states. Sarah monitored Arthur constantly, checking his vitals, adjusting his oxygen, offering sips of water. The Angel Wings team was exceptional. They spoke to Arthur in low, soothing tones, sharing anecdotes about their travels, keeping the atmosphere light and reassuring. Arthur spent most of the journey drifting in and out of sleep, but when he was awake, his eyes would often be fixed on the window, watching the landscape slowly change from urban sprawl to rolling farmland, then to the distant silhouette of mountains. He hummed softly to himself at times, snatches of Elvis songs barely audible. There were a couple of moments of concern. Once, Arthur's breathing became a little shallow, and his oxygen saturation dipped. Sarah and the transport nurse David sprang into action, adjusting his oxygen flow and administering a prescribed medication. Arthur responded quickly, his breathing easing, and the brief scare passed. Professionalism and calmness of the medical team were incredibly reassuring. "You're a trooper, Arthur," David said, patting his arm gently after the incident. "You're doing great. Just need to make it to Graceland," Arthur whispered, a glimmer of his old determination in his eyes. They stopped only briefly for fuel and crew changes, ensuring Arthur remained undisturbed. Meals were eaten, quickly packed sandwiches, and coffee consumed while the ambulance hummed along. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in brilliant blues, and then began its slow descent towards the west. As the afternoon wore on, a different kind of landscape began to appear. More trees, a denser feel to the air, and then finally signs for Memphis. A quiet buzz of excitement began to build in the ambulance. "We're almost there, Arthur," Sarah said, leaning closer. "Can you feel it?" Arthur's eyes were wide open now, fixed on the passing scenery. He didn't speak, but his hand surprisingly reached out and found Sarah's, squeezing it gently. The grip was weak, but full of a profound emotion. As they entered the outskirts of Memphis, the city seemed to glow with a unique energy. Elvis was everywhere, on billboards, in storefronts, on the radio. The atmosphere was palpable, a fitting welcome for a man who had loved the king his entire life. Finally, as dusk began to settle, they turned onto Elvis Presley Boulevard. Arthur's eyes widened further, his gaze fixed on the passing sights, the small shops, the signs, the general buzz of the area. It was all real. And then, in the distance, a grand white-columned mansion came into view, nestled among trees. "Graceland." "We're here, Arthur," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You made it. You're home." Arthur's breath hitched. A single tear, clear and bright, tracked a slow path down his temple. He didn't say a word, just stared, his eyes taking in every detail of the iconic gates, the mansion, the very air. The impossible journey was over. The dream was about to begin. The medical transport ambulance turned slowly into the grand curved driveway of Graceland. The famous iron gates, adorned with musical notes and the silhouette of Elvis, stood open, almost like arms, welcoming Arthur home. Dusk had fully settled, and the mansion was bathed in a soft ethereal glow from carefully placed lights, making it look majestic and serene. Normally, at this hour, Graceland would be closed, the grounds quiet and empty, but tonight there was a hushed activity. A small group of people stood waiting near the mansion's famous front steps. Priscilla Riley, dressed impeccably but with a warm, welcoming smile, a Graceland security guard, tall and stoic but with kind eyes, and a local doctor and nurse, ready to provide any immediate medical assistance needed. The ambulance came to a gentle stop near the entrance. The silence that fell was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the vehicle and the distant sounds of the city. "Welcome to Graceland, Mr. Hayes," Mike the paramedic announced softly. "You're here." Arthur's eyes were riveted on the mansion. He took a shallow, shaky breath. It's just like the pictures," he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "Only bigger, more real." The Angel Wings team expertly lowered the ramp. "Lisa?" The other paramedic stepped out first, followed by David, the transport nurse, and then Sarah. They then carefully began to guide Arthur's stretcher out of the ambulance. As Arthur was brought into the open air, Priscilla Riley stepped forward, her smile gentle. "Welcome, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice warm and clear. "It's an honor to have you here." "Arthur," still focused on the mansion, turned his head slightly to acknowledge her. He managed a small nod, a look of profound gratitude in his eyes. The Graceland doctor and nurse quietly assessed him, their movements swift and professional. "He's stable," the doctor murmured to Sarah. "Just very tired. He's done incredibly well with the journey." The decision had been made for Arthur to experience Graceland from his stretcher, ensuring his comfort and minimizing any exertion. A specially designed smooth rolling stretcher was waiting, allowing him to be gently transferred for easier maneuverability inside the mansion. The security guard opened the heavy front doors, revealing the softly lit interior of the mansion. It was breathtakingly beautiful even in the dim light. The grand staircase, the sparkling chandelier, the elegant furnishings. It was all there just as Arthur had seen in countless photos and documentaries. "We have a private resting area ready for you, Mr. Hayes, if you may. Mi fadi praise, mo point bees, perso avard, no rise." No rise. The medical teams from Angel Wings and Graceland Basic worked together, transferring Arthur to the Graceland stretcher. Sarah remained by his side, holding his hand, feeling the quiet tremor of excitement running through him. As they rolled Arthur across the threshold, a profound silence seemed to descend. It was as if the very walls breathed reverence. The air was cool, almost sacred. There were no crowds, no tour guides speaking into headsets, no cameras. Just Arthur, his medical team, Sarah, and the Graceland staff sharing in this deeply personal moment. The first room they entered was the famous living room, with its stunning peacock stained glass window. Arthur's gaze immediately went to it, his eyes wide with wonder. "Peacock," he whispered, a sound of pure awe escaping him. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." Priscilla stood by, her presence respectful and quiet. She gestured to a Graceland staff member, a kind-faced woman named Eleanor, who would be Arthur's personal guide for the evening. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice soft and soothing. "Welcome, Mr. Hayes. It's truly an honor to have you here. Please take your time. We're here for you." Arthur's eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail. The grand piano where Elvis had often played for friends and family, the elegant velvet drapes, the family photos on the tables. He was truly here, after a lifetime of longing. He was inside Graceland. The impossible had become astonishingly real. The journey had been arduous, but the destination was more profound than he could have ever hoped. Eleanor, Arthur's Graceland guide, moved with a quiet grace, her voice a soft murmur as she began the private tour. The silence of the mansion was profound, allowing Arthur to absorb every detail without distraction. Sarah stayed close, monitoring his comfort, but mostly just witnessing the incredible transformation that was occurring within him. They started in the living room, Arthur's gaze still fixed on the magnificent stained glass peacock. "He loved that window," Eleanor explained, her voice gentle. "He spent many quiet moments here, playing the piano, reading. Just being home." Arthur's eyes misted over. "Home," he repeated softly. "It feels lived in, not like a museum." Without the crowds, Graceland felt more like a grand, elegant home, paused in time. There was an intimacy that a typical tour could never offer. They moved into the dining room, with its formal setting, and then into the jungle room. This was a highlight for Arthur. His eyes lit up at the unique decor, the green shag carpet on the ceiling, the Polynesian-style furniture, the waterfall wall. "The jungle room," Arthur exclaimed, a rare burst of energy in his voice. He recorded so many songs here, didn't he? It was his favorite place to unwind. It was, Eleanor confirmed, a warm smile on her face. He loved the relaxed atmosphere. It was a place for creativity, for friends, for music. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to conjure the sounds of Elvis's voice echoing through the room. Sarah watched him, a lump in her throat. This was more than just seeing a house. It was about connecting with a legend, a memory, a part of himself. They bypassed the kitchen and ascended the grand staircase, or rather Arthur's stretcher was carefully guided up a discreet service lift, installed specifically for accessibility needs, which allowed him to follow the natural flow of the tour without exertion. The upstairs, usually off-limits to the public, was also part of his special access, a privilege that made the visit even more extraordinary. In Elvis's bedroom, Arthur lay still, absorbing the quiet grandeur. Eleanor explained details about Elvis's personal habits, his love for books, his connection to his mother Gladys, whose presence was still felt throughout the house. Arthur's eyes scanned every corner, from the heavy drapes to the personal items on the dressers. It was Samuro. Stepping into such an intimate space, they went through the trophy room, a dazzling display of gold and platinum records, awards and memorabilia. Arthur spent a long time here, his gaze lingering on each framed record. He truly was the king, he murmured, a profound reverence in his voice. He changed everything. Eleanor nodded. He certainly did, and it was all thanks to the love of his fans like yourself. Arthur's chest rose and fell with gentle, shallow breaths. He was clearly tiring, but his spirit was undimmed. I remember getting that album, he said, pointing a weak finger at a gold record for Aloha from Hawaii. Watched the concert on TV. My whole family gathered around. It was like magic, straight into our living room. As they moved through the various rooms, Eleanor shared anecdotes, some widely known, others more personal, collected over years of working at Graceland and speaking with those who knew Elvis. She spoke of his generosity, his kindness, his mischievous humor. She painted a picture of a complex, brilliant, and deeply human man. Finally, they reached the meditation garden, the quiet, peaceful spot where Elvis and members of his family were laid to rest. It was cool and tranquil under the night sky, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Soft lights illuminated the eternal flame, casting a warm glow over the gravesites. Arthur's stretcher was positioned so he could look directly at the graves. A profound silence fell over the small group. Arthur's eyes filled with a lifetime of emotion, fixed on Elvis's grave. He didn't speak for a long time, just lay there, tears silently streaming down his face. They weren't tears of sorrow, not entirely. They were tears of connection, of gratitude, of a dream. Realized, Sarah gently squeezed his hand. "You're here, Arthur," she whispered. Closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, a deep, abiding peace settling over his face. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Thank you, Elvis. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you." The night air was still, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah felt it too. A whisper of music, a faint echo of a voice, a sense of something profound and beautiful. Quiet reverence of the meditation garden lingered, a profound sense of peace settling over Arthur. He lay still, his gaze fixed on Elvis's final resting place. A deep, silent conversation taking place within him. Eleanor, the Graceland guide, stood respectfully nearby, allowing him his private moment. Sarah remained by his side, a silent witness to the culmination of a lifelong dream. After several minutes, Arthur finally stirred. His voice, though still weak, held a newfound clarity. "He was more than just a singer," he began, addressing Eleanor. "He was a phenomenon. He brought joy, he brought hope in a world that often felt gray. He was pure color." Eleanor smiled warmly. "He certainly was, and his generosity was legendary. He loved to share his blessing. I remember, I was a young man barely out of school. Things were tough, money was tight, but then Elvis came along and his music, it just lifted you up. It made you believe anything was possible. I saved every penny to buy his records. They were my escape, my comfort." He paused, a faint smile on his lips. "My wife, Martha, She wasn't a big rock and roll fan, but even she couldn't resist him. She'd tell House Rock came on, and she loved Can't Help Falling in Love. That was our song for a while. His voice trailed off, a poignant memory passing through him. Eleanor listened intently, her expression empathetic. "That's the beauty of Elvis's music," she said gently. "It touched so many lives in so many personal ways. It's timeless." "Did you ever meet him?" Arthur asked, a sudden curiosity in his voice. Eleanor shook her head. "No, Mr. Hayes, I didn't have that honor. I started working here after he passed, but I've spoken to so many people who did. His family, his friends, his staff, and they all tell similar stories of his kindness, his love for his fans, and his deep spiritual side. That's what I always felt. Something more than just the showmanship. A depth." "Absolutely," Eleanor affirmed. "He was a deeply spiritual man. He studied different religions, read extensively, and was always searching for deeper meaning. He found great peace in his garden." She gestured around the peaceful space. "He designed it himself, envisioning it as a place of quiet reflection for his family." Arthur turned his head to look at Sarah. "See, Sarah, it's not just a fancy house. It's sacred ground for so many of us." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining. "I understand, Arthur. I really do." Once a fan wrote to Elvis saying she was going through a very difficult time. Elvis, upon hearing about it, personally arranged for a telegram to be sent to her. Wishing her strength and sending his love, he often did little things like that, things that never made the headlines but meant the world to the headlines. Arthur's eyes, though tired, "That's the Elvis I knew in my heart, the good man, the caring soul." They stayed in the garden for a while longer, the quiet broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves and the night breeze. Arthur seemed to absorb the tranquility, the essence of the place. He closed his eyes, a peaceful smile gracing his lips. He might have even drifted off for a few moments, bathed in the soft glow of the eternal flame. Eleanor then gently suggested they move to the final stop, the Car Museum and Elisa Marie Jet. Arthur, despite his fatigue, managed a faint nod. He wanted to see it all. In the Car Museum, surrounded by Elvis's incredible collection of vehicles, Arthur's eyes widened at the sight of the famous pink Cadillac. "The pink Cadillac," he whispered, a hint of boyish delight in his voice. Every kid my age wanted one. He just had a way of making everything feel larger than life. As they were preparing to leave, Eleanor paused. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice soft but firm, "before you go, we have a small gift for you from Graceland, a token of our appreciation for your lifelong dedication." A Graceland staff member approached with a beautifully wrapped package. Arthur looked surprised, then deeply touched. The evening had been far more than he could have ever imagined. It was not just a tour. It was a deeply personal, connecting experience, made possible by the incredible generosity of the estate and the heart of a king who, even in death, continued to give back to his devoted fans. The Graceland staff member carefully unwrapped the gift for Arthur, who watched with wide, almost childlike anticipation. It was a beautiful custom-made photo album. On the cover, embossed in gold, were the words, "Arthur Hayes, a night at Graceland." Inside, the pages were filled with stunning professional photographs. They weren't just random shots of Graceland. They were pictures taken earlier that evening, during Arthur's private tour. There were photos of him being wheeled into the mansion, his face illuminated by the soft interior light. Shots of the jungle room from his perspective, the meditation garden bathed in the glow of the eternal flame. There were even a few discreetly taken candid shots of him, smiling eyes wide with wonder. Completely lost in the moment, the final page featured a message printed on elegant paper. "Dear Mr. Hayes, your lifelong dedication to Elvis Presley. It was our distinct honor and privilege to welcome you to the home of the king. May the memories of this special night bring you peace and joy with deepest respect and gratitude. The Elvis Presley Enterprises family. Arthur stared at the album, his hands trembling slightly as he touched the pages. They took these tonight, he whispered, disbelief and overwhelming emotion filling his voice. For me? Eleanor nodded, her eyes soft. Yes, Mr. Hayes, we wanted you to have a tangible memory of your visit. Something to cherish. Carefully turned a page, his gaze lingering on a picture of him looking at the peacock stained glass window. He remembered that exact moment, the awe he felt. It was all captured, a perfect, beautiful memory, forever preserved. I don't know what to say, Arthur murmured, tears again streaming down his face. But these were purely tears of profound happiness and gratitude. This is the most wonderful gift ever. Sarah felt her own eyes welling up. This was beyond anything she had imagined. Graceland hadn't just opened its doors, it had opened its heart. They had understood the depth of Arthur's wish and given him a treasure beyond measure. Priscilla Riley stepped forward. Mr. Hayes, she said, her voice gentle, your devotion to Elvis is an inspiration to us all. We want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of this moment. It truly embodies the spirit of Elvis, who always gave back to his fans. Arthur managed a weak but sincere smile. Thank you, all of you. This is it's everything I ever dreamed of, and more. As the visit drew to a close, the Graceland staff helped the Angel Wings medical team prepare Arthur for the journey back. They had arranged for him to stay overnight at a specialized care facility near the airport, in Memphis. He got a full night's rest, before the return trip saying goodbye was stifle nights. Priscilla Riley personally walked with Arthur's stretcher to the waiting ambulance, ensuring every detail was perfect. You're always welcome here, Mr. Hayes, she said softly. As the ambulance pulled away from Graceland, Arthur kept his eyes fixed on the mansion, watching it shrink in the distance. He held the photo album tightly against his chest, a precious treasure. The drive to the medical facility was quiet. Arthur was exhausted, but his face held an expression of profound peace. He slept soundly that night, the best sleep he had had in weeks, surrounded by the new comforting memories of Graceland. The next morning, the Angel Wings team carefully brought him back to his home hospital. His family was there, waiting, their faces anxious. When they saw the serene smile on Arthur's face, the photo album clutched in his hand. They knew Maria, his daughter, knelt beside his stretcher. Dad, how was it? Arthur opened his eyes, a faint light in them. It was magic, sweetheart, he whispered, his voice thin but content. Pure magic. He looked at Sarah, a deep gratitude in his eyes. You made it happen, Sarah. You truly did. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her. She had been just a nurse, but she had been part of something truly extraordinary. Arthur had returned, physically frail but spiritually renewed, his heart full. He had seen Graceland. He had fulfilled his dream. And now he carried the king's home and the kindness of strangers within him, a precious gift of memory. Back in his hospital room, the familiar quiet hum of the machines returned, but the atmosphere had changed. Arthur was still frail, his body still failing, but his spirit was undeniably lighter, almost luminous. The little photo album lay open on his bedside table, always within reach. He would often ask Sarah, or his daughter Maria, to turn a page to linger on a particular image. Look at that light in the jungle room, he'd say, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. Imagine him there, strumming his guitar, just being himself. He didn't speak much about anything else. His world had narrowed, focused entirely on the beautiful memory of Graceland. He ate little, slept more. But whenever he was awake, his eyes would drift to the album, or he would hum a low, tuneless melody that Sarah recognized as an Elvis song. Maria spent most of her days with him now. She would read to him sometimes from a book about Elvis, sometimes just comforting stories. She saw the change in him, the profound peace that had settled over his final days. He's so content, she told Sarah one afternoon, her voice thick with emotion. "It's like he's ready now because his last wish came true." Sarah found herself checking on Arthur even when she wasn't on duty, drawn by the quiet dignity and peace he exuded. He was no longer battling, he was resting, soaking in the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. One evening, as the same late afternoon sun that had been setting on the day he whispered his wish now streamed through the window, painting the room in soft gold, Arthur stirred. Sarah was sitting beside him, holding his hand. His eyes, however, opened wide, and for a moment they held a startling clarity, a deep, knowing look. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice incredibly faint. "Thank you for everything." "You're welcome, Arthur," she whispered back, tears already gathering in her eyes. She knew this was it. He closed his eyes again, a peaceful smile gracing his lips. And then, so quietly that Sarah almost missed it, he hummed. It was the first clear melody she had heard him produce in days, a fragile, almost ethereal tune. "Can't Help Falling in Love." The same song that had been playing on his radio when he first whispered his wish. He hummed the first few bars, then faded. His breath hitched once gently, and then he was still. The hum of the machines continued, but Arthur Hayes was gone. He had drifted off his last melody, a soft echo of the king's song, his heart full of Graceland. Maria returned a few minutes later, sensing the change even before she reached the room. She sank into a chair, weeping softly, but then she looked at Arthur's face so peaceful, and a small bittersweet smile touched her lips. "He's with Elvis now," she murmured. "He's dancing." In the days that followed, the hospital staff, deeply moved by Arthur's story, shared condolences with Maria. Even Priscilla Riley from Graceland sent a handwritten card expressing her sorrow at Arthur's passing, but also her profound joy that they had been able to fulfill his wish. "His story will forever be a part of Graceland's heart," she wrote. Sarah carried Arthur's memory with her. His story became a quiet legend on the ward, a reminder that even in the face of despair, hope could bloom, and dreams, however impossible they seemed, could sometimes, with enough love and determination, come true. She learned a valuable lesson from Arthur, that the true measure of a life isn't just in its length, but in the dreams pursued, the connections made, and the peace found. Arthur Hayes, the quiet, lifelong Elvis fan, had indeed made it to Graceland. He had walked its hallowed halls, felt the spirit of his king, and carried that magic back with him, right to his very last breath. His last melody was not one of sorrow, but of pure, beautiful fulfillment. And in the heart of a compassionate nurse, and in the grand, generous home of the king, his wish and his memory would live on.